But there was this constant questioning of, am I good enough? Should I just go find a job? Like,
All right, everybody, it's the Get Stuff Done podcast, and it's time to get stuff done. I'm with another fantastic guest. Her name is Elfreda Chan. She goes by Elfie, and she is someone who was born in Hong Kong, but went to school in the UK, and also her university at the same as mine, Bath University, where she studied architecture. Following that, she joined a global practice for architectural design, Moser and Associates, where she was there for a little over a decade. After that, she moved into workplace strategy at Twitter, and more recently, just over a year, and she's told me the 1 year anniversary has just passed by. She has started her entrepreneurial journey with her own business. She's still based on the West Coast of America. So, Elfie, thanks so much for joining me today.
thanks for having me.
So you have now, like you said, embarked on your own business. What's it called and what do you do?
Yeah, so the company is called Noctilume. The name is a nod to the noctilucent clouds in the mesosphere. So basically, they're the type of clouds that hang up really high and you can only see them at dusk. They kind of glow in the dark. And it resonates with how I work with my target clients, who are essentially creatives who are very right-brained and set out on their own journeys to make things and design things, but typically don't have a whole lot of desire or insight or time or maybe even interest in doing some of the more left-brain business stuff. And so I bring a strategy jumpstart to those people in this shining a light where you feel in the dark kind of thing.
Okay.
That's kind of what I do.
How did you come up with the name? It's such a unique name, and I love that you've got the story behind it. How did you come up with it?
You know, it was ChatGPT. I spent quite a long time with it, trying to come up with ideas. It gave me some very brutal and horrible names at first. But after some guidance and telling them that I wanted it to, one, resonate with creatives and two, have a meaning behind it, I learned very quickly that a lot of names already exist out there. And so we made up a name. When I say I mean me and ChatGPT. So yeah.
Love it. Oh, that's fantastic. So, and now it's your own. How has it been so far? I mean, you spent, basically your entire career working for larger organizations. Well, let's start first with what made you decide to make that jump.
My hand was kind of forced into it. As some may know, Twitter laid off a gigantic portion of their workforce at the end of 2022. And that was around about the time where many organizations were questioning what they were going to do with their workplace. It was basically through the pandemic. And it got to a very stalemate situation where everyone who I consider my peer was being asked to read what the crystal ball said about what the future of work was. And the reality was we didn't really have an answer. And so the conversation just continued, but no one was really taking any action. And so when the time came that I was let go, trying to get back into that conversation felt a little bit dull and overdone. And it just so happened that a client of mine was needing some help. She's a luxury residential interior designer, and she was really struggling. She had been in business for 10 years and was really struggling to kind of get herself organized and getting herself like operating at an optimal level. And she said, "Hey, if you have time, why don't you help me?" And I said, "Okay, well, yeah, let's have a chat." Realized that a lot of the things that she felt were difficult were things that were just so second nature to me. I said, "Well, let's do this. I'll start a company and let's go." And I was lucky that I had a client before I even had the business. And then from there, I
Fantastic.
picked up a few more. So that's just how it's happened.
Fantastic. I mean, so in a sense, it was almost the perfect storm. Like it was unexpected that you were without a job, but it created like that opportunity that you otherwise wouldn't necessarily have been, like you say, your hand was forced into, and absolutely fantastic to have, already the the impetus from a client before you've even had to do any marketing or BD, because I mean, for small businesses, often that's the hardest thing. They're good at doing something. They have a good service or product, but find it difficult to get out there. But already pre day zero, you had that, and so is that what your business is based around? Has kind of that one client led to more clients since then?
So I developed my service offerings around what that client needed, but I learned very quickly that were some things I didn't want to continue doing. I felt that, it was too expensive for her to hire someone like me to do some of those things. And so over time and after picking up a couple of others, I kind of narrowed down what my scope of services were and what I was offering. My second, third, and subsequent clients, I haven't had a whole lot. It's only been the first year, have all come through, networking, and just people that I knew that were also doing their own thing. And I happened to, just like our timing just collided. And more recently, I was at a speaking event in New York, where I was talking to a bunch of designers, and I think someone is interested in talking to me. So I'm doing all the BD things now. And yes, they are absolutely hard, but I think having had a few clients in the bag have helped bring a little bit of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Because everyone's chasing those use cases, those case studies, those testimonials, because that can always lead to new things. But let's go a little bit back a step, and maybe you can explain what exactly is workplace strategy for those who have not heard of that before.
Yeah, workplace strategy, which is a little different to what I do now.
Okay.
Workplace strategy focuses on what a company is hoping to achieve and what designers and environment creators believe can help people to achieve. Because the belief of interior designers and architects is that environments can affect behaviors. And if people's behaviors are affected in a positive way, leading to high performance, then the needs of the business will be more likely to be achieved. And so workplace strategy straddles this middle ground between business needs and space needs and people needs and technology needs. So that
Hmm.
was what I was doing for well over a decade.
Okay. And so, I mean, you said it's a belief, but it's more than a belief. I mean, there's studies that prove this is the case. But are you saying that still a lot of organizations still don't fully believe and aren't convinced? How is it
Yeah,
these days?
I mean, I would agree. There's a lot of studies that prove it, but at the same time, what's really hard when you're working in tech and trying to show someone data is that there are a lot of other factors that fold into this. So, for example, in your world, in the people world, in the HR world, if you don't have the people systems and the people programs in place, no matter what you do to a space, it doesn't fully do what it's supposed to. So, for example, if your team was not encouraged to speak to another team, not that people do that, but as an example, and even if
Yeah.
I designed a space to allow you to do that, if your people system says no, then the space just sits there empty. So I think it's one of those things where um, across multiple factors, if things
Mm.
were the same and you change this one variable to prove that it works, then absolutely. But often when we're brought in to talk about workplace and you're building new space, or your old space is really dated, or you're noticing that people aren't talking to each other, when you're doing that workplace strategy or that renovation, you're also probably looking at your people as well, and the programs that are set up. So again, I say it's a belief, um, yes, there is evidence. It's just very hard because
Sure.
it's not like a obvious science.
Right, right. And it goes so far as to exactly like you said, sometimes the very definition of what is work, and the environment is being designed after a rethinking of what that company defines as work. I mean, of course, we see some large corporations doing very superficial things like chucking in bean bags and a foosball table and thinking this is culture, and expect everything to change, but actually there's obviously considerably more, because like you said, it's the intersection of so many parts of the what would be maybe one of the highlights of a kind of a redesign, or maybe it's more than a redesign, maybe it's an evolution of a company that you're involved with, that you saw some great results from?
It was definitely my time at Twitter, when the pandemic really shook things up. I think pre-pandemic we were going down a rabbit hole a little bit. I was working with a tech firm down here, a large one that many people know and love and use. In fact, it's where we interact quite a lot. um, we're really trying to question, like, hey, how can we improve our micro kitchen pantry spaces, or how do we make our meeting rooms even better, even though they were top of the line and excellent. And I think that when you already have something great and you want to make it better, you start kind of getting into this, I don't know, you get lost in trying to improve something, and you forget why you're doing it. And so the pandemic really shook things up because it made everyone question, like, what is work? What is our priority? Where do I do it the best? And how should I be interacting with people? And, you know, become more intentional about every interaction and everything that we do. And so in that time frame, we were really reevaluating the real estate footprint. We were reevaluating what drew people in, how we were supposed to have meetings when some people were at home and some people were together, and recreate this equitable experience that we were forced into. Everyone was just a tile on the screen, and everyone was equally unable to jump in. You had to raise your hand, but it created a new situation that we had to think about. And so from that perspective, workplace strategy got very interesting. And there was a lot of experimentation and a lot of failure. And then we were also thinking about what it meant to work from home. Like, how do companies then get involved in making that environment good for you? Because not everyone's home is well equipped, and what could some of the funding that was used to make those slides and everything, that became really unnecessary in this now future context, to help them at home have better Wi-Fi, or, better audiovisual tools like how we're talking, so that the sound is better, stuff like that.
No, I mean, Elfie, I understand you've had a bit of a sore throat in the last 25. I really appreciate you soldiering on and still, especially because this is all about talking, which is using your voice. So I appreciate you going ahead with the podcast today. I think, yeah. I mean, if I think back to when I started work, the pandemic has definitely been the single largest, quickest shift in changing the very definition of work. And you're right. There were some interesting things that came out of people's desire, motivation to work from home. People able to buy a second house in the countryside with all that they need, dedicated office. Of course, they're going to love working from home. Perhaps more common on this side of the world, in Korea and other Asian cities, highly dense, smaller living spaces, people living with their parents until a later age, not able to be comfortable working from home. So a massive divide in that sense. So I think it is a very interesting conversation, because it's not yet resolved, right? It's still continuing to evolve. Of course, at my end of recruitment, I see from companies what they're looking for and what they're offering and what they perceive they need to offer to get the right people. It's clear that countries and companies are reacting very differently in this regard. Some moving quickly, some moving slowly, some reverting back to old ways when it comes to these callbacks to the office. But still, a big divide between knowledge workers, office workers who now can, with a good internet connection, do all the work they need to do from anywhere, versus others who have to be on site to do what they've got to do, and that's not going to change. It doesn't matter how much good technology they have, and so I think that will continue. Probably we'll see, people thinking about what job they want to do in the future. It will kind of feed back to that. What's your preference? We've had now 4 years essentially since pandemic, and now you've had 1 year working in your own business. How about your own personal preferences?
I would say that when I need to focus, when I need to get stuff done,
There we go.
Being at home when there's nobody around is definitely a lot better. But I have a 5-year-old and my husband's at home quite a bit too. You have to learn to work with these new coworkers in your space. So definitely being at home without distraction was very helpful. But there were definitely times when I felt like I needed to get something from someone, and it was definitely easier being in person together. So I made an effort before doing my own business when I was still at Twitter. I made an effort to be in the office a couple times a week, just to be near my teammates. And because sometimes they'll think of something because they see you and then they're like, oh, I need to tell you this thing. You can make 10 strides from there than having to, ping them online. And there is this, I don't know the neuroscience behind it, but there is something called recency bias. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, where if you see someone or if you've recently interacted with someone, your brain has a tendency to go back to that someone or that thing a lot quicker. And so, if you don't see someone's face, your brain just doesn't go there, which is why like during the pandemic, we were told like, put a picture of your team at home so you could see them. So you remember to reach out. But like, there's just something about seeing someone's face physically or just them as a person physically that will trigger something in your brain to remember something. So I definitely made an effort to kind of do both. And now that I'm on my own, with my clients all over the place. So my clients are in Vancouver, Canada, in New York, and then here in the San Francisco Bay Area, they're on the East Bay. I'm on what's called the Peninsula. So it still takes about an hour just to get there. We just end up making calls. So we're at home pretty much all the time. Every now and then we'll meet for coffee or something. But I'm at home and that works for me.
Yeah, I mean, I had never heard of recency bias, but it does make a lot of sense in what you've explained, and I also feel that, essentially that's what a lot of the social media algorithms are based on, right? As you, what are you looking for, and then recent searches, search history will kind of feed into that. The one thing that I always feel is that. Whether it's somehow difficult to do a very just on the moment type of call to someone online. It's like because we're online, we tend not to call someone, and so I should say our generation do this. New generations just do this. So let's keep it safe for everyone. Whereas somehow we've always got to schedule the call rather than it just being very natural and just and that's of course when you're in an office, of course, avoiding that super awkward perching on someone's desk. No one likes that. I remember that from a long time ago. But just the ability to like go around to someone's desk and have a chat. That natural initiation of communication is definitely a big one for me, that I find, because it just takes more time and effort to have to say, oh, are you okay, at 1 o'clock, and then something happens, you don't make them at 1 o'clock, then you've got to like it. I find that is something that I miss from just immediate and kind of instant face-to-face communication.
Yeah, I think it's that, when you notice someone's just going to stand up to stretch and you know that all you want is 5 minutes, or they're like on their way walking somewhere. You don't you don't have that ability to do it when you're not in person. I think if people are good about respecting boundaries, like they've got their headphones in, they're trying to focus, they're at their desk, they're not going to perch on the desk. But I think what's really missing is that, oh, I noticed your body language is changing. You're kind of transitioning between your work. You're stretching a little. Okay, Gordon, I'm going to come over. I need to ask you like 5 minutes, or I see you get up to go grab some water. I'm going to walk with you to get some water,
Yeah.
as opposed to, I'm never going to know when you're going to grab some water unless your screen is on all the time, which is very distracting for you to have something on your screen like that. And
Yeah.
and like you say, you then have to schedule it, which then gets pushed out, and then you're looking for windows, and then the windows aren't available until 2 weeks from now, and then
Yeah,
something that
right.
if could have just happened just then and there takes two
Right.
weeks, and then by that point you
Yep.
might have forgotten like the urgency of it already. So
For sure. Let
yeah.
alone the coincidental relationships that I've sometimes had with colleagues who I'm not directly working with, but they always happen to go and get their coffee at 10 a.m., let's just say, or they always happen to park in a building or whatever. So you just meet them, and then out of habit you build a relationship with them, even though they're in a totally different part of the business. You don't have any reason to talk to them. That is also some natural, quite pleasant human connection that sometimes happens, which also you don't get because everything has to be intentional as well. So yeah.
Yeah, when we that was called chance interaction, and that was very much engineered in workplace design, and it followed the
Talking to
concept
an expert.
of
Yeah.
it followed the concept of milk at the back of the store. So if you ever notice, milk is usually at the very back of a store, and they want you to walk through the aisle to just by chance think that, oh, I think I also needed this thing because I needed milk. And so in workplace design, pantries are usually located in more centralized areas so that people from different teams have to gather in one area. It's purposely not as close to you because they want you to go somewhere where you could cross paths physically with someone else that you might not know. And the belief here, again, I say belief, I think there is science, but it's hard to prove, is that when you have team members from other teams talking to each other, you'll get an idea that you might not have thought of before, and therefore causing innovation. So that's all part of it. And now it's gone. It's very intentional now. It's very hard to have those chance interactions.
I'm curious about the industry divide on the focus on this. I guess probably tech is probably at the forefront of thinking about this because we already are aware of examples going back decades of tech companies being very employee oriented and workspace focused. But are there perhaps other industries where there's just so much opportunity, but it just hasn't even, the surface has not even been scratched yet?
I would say law firms, probably.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
because even pre-pandemic, they were and are still very office heavy. They're very much about, and it's the nature of their work. It's very confidential information, but they're very driven by siloing of information. And so even then for them, the interaction had always been intentional. And so when
Hmm.
the pandemic hit, the challenge for them wasn't so much about how they were collaborating. It was about how they could get their documents to their paralegals and all that stuff and back to them in a way that wasn't going to cause any danger. And I think when you're reading documents that long, it really does help to print them out, rather than having everything on the screen. I think the iPad has definitely helped a little, But there is something to be said, and I read books. I don't know about you, but there's something to be said to know how much is left in your stack of paper, a physical thing. So they're going through some digitization, but I think it's definitely something that will be a little slower to catch on. And so their focus is not in this, are we going back or not? Because their problem is like in a whole different arena.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I think I don't think law firms are particularly different anywhere in the world. I think they're all relatively similar in that regard. So that's interesting. And yet there are global law firms, right? I mean, there are ones who are fully aware of the challenges in all these areas. So, yeah. Okay. And so tell me about getting stuff done. What is it that drives you to get stuff done on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Yeah, I recently did a personality test. There are so many of them out there,
Okay.
but
Which
it
one did you do?
revealed this one is there's an app called Dimensional,
Okay.
and it's different. It's not mainstream, I don't think, but it revealed to me that I am motivated by enjoyment or pleasure. So I am motivated when something looks good, feels good, is good, tastes good, like that kind of thing. And so I think a lot of the work that I do it because I like it, and so thereby things that I don't like don't get done.
Okay.
But so I try to very much try to find the enjoyment in things, and people would find like the things I enjoy weird. Like I love washing the dishes. Some people might think that's like not an enjoyable experience, but the end result is that things are clean. And so that's my strive, so.
Okay. And in the course of, let's say a day where you've got many different things to do, how do you have any techniques or special strategies that you use to stay focused on the task? Maybe considering that everything is something that you're enjoying, but still, there can be kind of ups and downs.
Yeah. I mean, those are the internal motivators, but there are also, external motivators. Like I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got a 5-year-old that needs to go to school. We've got mouths to feed, stuff like that. And that, when you're at the age that we are, you can't really just focus on one reason why you're doing things anymore. So for me, prioritization is like number one because, growing up, I learned very quickly not everything can be done in a day. There's only so many hours, and so you have to do your best at picking the most important or most urgent or most significant things. So every day I make sure to kind of have a look at my day, or even the night before, have a look at the next day. Okay, what are the most important things that need to get done? And then I'll do them first. And even if it means it takes a long time at first, I'll just like hunker down on that, get it done. I also have a lot of lists. I break things down into projects, and then within projects, I break things down into tasks, and I try to plan how long each task is going to take, so that I can kind of figure out my time blocking, which leads me to the next thing, which is time blocking. I use Google for my calendars, and I use like the focus time function to be like, okay, I'm going to use half an hour to do this today or an hour to do that today. And then I make sure that I actually have time for getting my son ready for school, dropping him off at school, having lunch, because I was really bad at eating for a while. So I make sure like I have time blocked for lunch, and so on and so forth. So I live by my calendar, and some other things that are a bit counterintuitive is knowing when to slow down and when to be like, okay, I'm trying to do too many things today. Let's try not to be over ambitious, because then I just get stressed out, and then I get paralyzed with how much there needs to get done, and then I don't do anything. So there's a lot to be said about slowing down, pausing, just give yourself a little grace. And if it's just one thing you do in that day, as long as it's one of the most important things, just do that. So
Yeah. No, I think probably highlighted maybe one of the hardest things, because fundamentally people, we're all inclined internally and also from societal pressure to do as much as we can, and achieve as much as we can in the shortest possible time, right? I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk is a good person for always telling people to slow down, and you've got time. So many of the most prolific business owners started their businesses in their 50s and 60s, right? That's another good one. But the kind of doing less to achieve more. I think it's an interesting one. I was with a group last week, and they were looking at their kind of prioritization and how they could maybe prioritize better and actually be stronger at rejecting requests from other parts of the organization, so that they at first glance it's like doing less, but it's actually achieving more, because what they will be doing will end up being better, and they won't be doing the things which they shouldn't be doing. So it's like you said about the prioritization of urgent versus important, which is another great trade-off that everybody is stuck in firefighting mode. I heard one good technique for that, which was to just put it down to, the to-do list can be infinite, right? And you mentioned about how you categorize yours. Sometimes mine are very mixed, and so I've got some random personal thing, some that I've got to take care of that day, and big work stuff. And so this technique was select 3 things of that to-do list which you absolutely have to get done no matter what. And so as long as you get at least those 3 things done, you can consider it, a day well spent. And the other things can either be, well, you can do what you want with them. You can push them off. You can, give them to someone else. You can delay, etc. So, but I thought that was quite a good way of looking at things. You said you use Google Calendar. Are you pretty much entirely digital with your kind of task management and workflow?
I would say yes. I think everything is connected between my phone and my laptop. It's all digital. Yeah.
And so then there comes the pain of these days, if you have to do an update, or you get a new phone, that is now really one of the modern day pain points of having to do all your settings, get everything set up exactly like you like it. Whereas I have a notebook also that I use on a daily basis. I get to the end of it, it's done, open a new one. So yeah, I use both to kind of balance those things.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. But that's also the reason why there's so many data centers now, because so much is being pushed onto the cloud. So really the devices that you have are just interfaces now. So I would say that getting the settings right is not as big of an issue these days than it was like maybe 10 years ago. I will say though, like once you're committed to a platform, it's hard to transition to another platform because everything is then stored in that platform. Not that I would ever leave Google, but I am testing out this task management system where it's getting really expensive. And if I want to move away, like all of my data is there. And it's very hard to then go, okay, well then do I copy everything over, or do I just
Yeah.
like export it as like some Excel spreadsheet archive for the future and start over, which I guess you would do if you had a physical notebook anyway. You would just look at it from time to time for like some past experience. But yeah, I think with any medium it's hard. But yeah.
Yeah, it's something that is a constant decision that needs to be looked at as business owners, the tech stack that you're using, because there is, like you say, there's this, I'm sure there's a term for it. It's kind of stickiness, right? It's the inability to move off of one software onto another. But there's always new ones coming out, and there's always better ones coming out. So it is a constant evolution that's required. I mean, I think in the course of the 8 years of running RDI, I mean, I could give you a really long list of the tools that we've used, we've loved, but then something better has come out. We've moved on to that. We've then had a bigger team. We've then needed to move. There's so many different factors to choose. Things which are expensive on a personal basis. You would never pay that much money for a monthly subscription for yourself, but all of a sudden, the ROI from the business is so much greater. You can definitely afford that. So it's always something. But I don't find. I don't know if you're an early adopter of technology or not, but I'm not so inclined to just jump on the new thing. So I always use communities and groups and other networks to try to find out what the latest good tool is in order that I can test it out myself.
I would say I'm an early adopter in some areas, but when it comes to
Okay.
operating my business, I definitely go with trusted platforms, things that I know have worked for people, because, there's so many things that you demand of a tool when you're trying to get stuff done, that you don't want to wait for this new tool to like figure out that new function. You really want someone who's already like been there, done that with many other companies. So yeah, I think on a personal side, I love trying new things, but when it comes to business, it's like, no, I have too many needs, because if the technology isn't there, then I have to waste my time trying to figure out how that's going to get done, when really what I want to focus on is getting my own work done.
Right,
So.
right. What are some of the future plans for Noctilume?
That's a good question. I'm developing some new offerings, testing it out with customers, like a lower barrier to entry offering for people who are my main target client are people who are stuck, but I'm looking at people who are lost, trying to help people who want to start their own business or have just had an initial idea of how to start their business and don't really know the first step to take, like even before, registering the company, like trying to figure out what they're here for, what they're trying to solve, what excites them. And I think I find a lot of enjoyment helping people figure that out, especially for passion-driven creatives, because they have a genius about them that the world would be such a sad place without their offerings. So yeah, I'm doing a little bit of that. Also pushing on some marketing and business development initiatives, get my name out there. I've got some pitches that I'm working on for clients out in Asia, just because I have experience out there. So going a little bit more global beyond North America. So yeah, but it's very much let's see how it goes type of thing. My vision for it is really I just want to help people out, and if the course runs for however long, then I'm grateful for that, and if it runs out, then I'll try something else. So
okay, so it sounds like what you do is barrierless or boundaryless, I should say. You're not restricted by kind of geographic region. Then
not really. Yeah, not really.
So then where do you see the most kind of opportunistic areas, like and that might not be geographically, but where are the areas where you're finding the most needs so far?
So far, the main thing people have come to me for are optimization. So, and in fact, it's getting stuff done. Several of my clients are struggling when they get to a certain size or when they grow to a certain point in their business, where how they were doing things before is no longer helping them. and they realize that their profit margins are just not growing as their business is growing, if that makes sense. They're not able to make some processes more efficient so that they can do higher impact work, or the way that their team members are talking to each other is not very effective. And so it's the getting stuff done at an organizational level. And my clients are quite small. They're like small and micro businesses. So really the largest I'm working with is like 30 odd people. But even at that scale, and in fact, even in large multinational organizations, teams are generally that size anyway. But at that scale, you can already start to see like the frustrations and the assumptions that are made about other team members, or just this feeling that things aren't working and there's bottlenecks and stuff like that. So that's a really large part of how I help. So I come in, do a diagnostic, and then provide some recommendations. And sometimes the recommendations are not something that I could provide for them, and I have to pull in some external experts. For example, I've had to work with one of my clients on figuring out new roles that need to be brought in, writing job descriptions and stuff like that. But then the recruiting part is definitely not something that I'm good at. Hi, RDI. And then there are, some people that need help with more streamlined contracts and stuff like that. And again, I'm not the expert. Pull in lawyers. So I I see myself as a bit of a, I guess, with tentacles. I try to help them, but then I pull in other people in. But really, it's that. And then the other ones that I work with are more of the touchy-feely passion-based. So I have had clients who really want to relook at their brand, rethink what their messaging is to their clientele, and like put a little bit of a sharper focus on what they're doing so that they're not just doing work because that's what they need to do, like really kind of getting to what they care about. And a lot of creatives are driven by passion. In fact, I think all creatives are. And so when they lose that, they don't enjoy what they do as much. And so to have them regain that, and to be reminded why they're doing this, and heard by someone else, has kind of reignited them in some ways. So I would say there's those kind of polar opposites.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things which I have really still struggle with 8 years into running my business is time perception. So the things which I would like to get done quickly, or not even get done quickly, but just move quickly, might go incredibly slowly, and other things which I actually would like to do over a more long-term basis suddenly appear and are suddenly there. And I find that's maybe one of the single biggest differences between working in a large organization, which has that structure, the process, the policy, which makes everything much more orderly compared to running your own business. Have you come across that at all? Has it also been a struggle for you? Or
I think in I think in the context of getting lost in something, for sure. Like if you get in flow and you just do something and you're just like, before you know it, hours have gone by. In that context, yes. I've also experienced, thinking that something's going to take a lot longer than it does. And then I resolve it. I'm like, oh, well, that was easy. So in that regard, yes. But I think because I've come from such large organizations, I still operate as if I'm part of some big team, and that someone's going to probably want to know how things have gone and how my metrics are. That I still kind of run myself in that way. So yeah, a little bit, I guess, is my answer.
maybe it's something that I am having amnesia over, that I used to be like that, given my previous experience of large organizations, but now, this far in, maybe I'm not, maybe I've changed, and
It's the 8
I'm not,
years. I think it's the 8 years.
maybe, maybe. I mean, there's a 7-year itch. Maybe there's maybe it's an 8-year itch these days. Who knows? Who knows? Okay, has there any been a time? This doesn't have to be in the last year, but also previously, where you've actually failed to get done what you needed to do, and how did you go about resolving that?
Yeah, procrastination is real. I think I've been procrastinating on my own business plan. It
Okay.
has taken me about a year and I still haven't got it done. I think part of it is because it is just such a mundane task. And I find so much more excitement in actually doing the work than documenting how I'm supposed to do the work. And I also think that, I guess because I'm a doer first, I find that if I do it first, then I have something to reference in order to document. But I know that I need to get it done, partly to help me with my business development and marketing. And, so if I am applying to any very official things, that I have something that I could copy and paste and use readily. So I was actually speaking to a coach about this because I felt like I just kept pushing it off. I would just, for me, it was definitely a low priority anyway, but it's gotten to the point where I'm like, I can't keep just pushing this to the back of the list because it needs to get done. And my coach said, well, why don't you try the Pomodoro technique? I think I'm saying that right. I'm not sure. But
Yep.
it's you set aside 25 minutes every day. And then at the last 5 minutes, you do the kind of the retroactive to see like how you did. So that worked for a little bit because I definitely felt going into it on the first day of trying this, I was overwhelmed with just like how much I had to do. But I started chipping away at it, and then I was happy about the 25 minutes being done. Like I literally set a timer, like, oh, it's done, I'm done, you know. And I'm getting through it slowly, slowly but surely. And it kind of reminds me of like doing the laundry. When you have a big pile of clothes. I don't know if you experience this, but there's several fellow moms that I know that have a big pile of clean laundry that just never gets folded and put away. And you look at it and it's just a gigantic mountain. But really, what you have to do is just start with one thing. You start with one thing, and then eventually the mountain goes away. And so, yeah, it's breaking it down into smaller tasks, and not be so worried about like when are you ever going to get it done. Just trust the process and just hunker down. And if it's really unbearable, like my 25 minutes, my coach says you could try longer. I'm like, no, I can't do longer. I feel allergic to doing longer than that, but at least there's 25 minutes, and I could commit to 25 because it doesn't feel super long. But every 25 minutes, I get a little bit more, and eventually I'll get there. I'm not quite there yet, but trust the process.
No, definitely. I mean, it is a classic one which everybody's heard, but it's the classics that go through the sands of time and continue to be meaningful for people, and definitely getting started is half the battle, as they say. The analogy I often use is with when you on a morning run. Nobody is excited to jump out of bed on a cold morning and go for the run. So don't think about getting up to go for the run. Just get up and put your running shoes on. And chances are, once you've got your running shoes on, you'll be out the door and off you go, and you'll be totally fine. So the same applies. So yeah, I mean, Pomodoro is definitely one that has been around for a while, and definitely has some merit. So I'm glad that you've found that as a technique, and as you say, if over time it begins to wear off, and then you need a new stimulation to be able um, to keep moving in the right direction, then that's also okay as well. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, any celebrations for your 1 year anniversary that you said you have just
Yeah,
recently?
I'm in the process of thinking about. I haven't written it yet, but it's still brand new. The anniversary is still brand new. But my husband suggested that I should write down what are the things that I've learned over the past year, as a celebration of this 1 year. And I'm going to share one of them that comes to mind right now is that, this fear of doing it. I did take the first step. I definitely, with the benefit of having a client, I took the first step. But there was this constant questioning of, am I good enough? Should I just go find a job? This is not the same experience as being employed. And while, yay, I'm in control, oh no, I'm in control. And, over the course of the year, I definitely have gotten more confident that, well, I guess kind of like running, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And then before you know it, you've hit a year. You're like, wait, I've been doing this for a year and there are people that really want to work with me. And maybe we could take this for another year. Let's see how it goes. So that's been an interesting mindset learning that I think you don't learn it until you've done it, and that was a big awakening for me.
I think that's very, very true. You usually don't learn it until you've done it. I hope that these reflections become a LinkedIn post. I noted that you're actually is it top voice on strategy? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great that you've focused on that and now got that little bit of recognition for that as well. Elfie, I think we're pretty much out of time now. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I think we've cast quite a wide net over our working lives and the journey that we've embarked upon as business owners. If people want to reach out and get in touch with you, what would be the best way?
I would say visit my website, www.noctilume. So that's NOCTILUME.com. And leave me some contact information and we'll be in touch there.
All right. Well, we'll be sure to also post that link in the show notes as well. So thanks so much for being my guest today.
Thanks, Gordon.
And thanks, everybody, for listening once again to this episode of the Get Stuff Done podcast. Let's get stuff done.